and welcome to final part of Monsters in the Media. And we're going to be talking about the one that needs kind of like another boot. This one needs a boost. But what I mean is, like, these guys need to get back to basics, and I'm talking about vampires. Now, vampires, we all know them. They're probably more hyped in any other media in these recent days than any of the three, probably more so than the werewolves and zombies. Why I say that is because the Twilight Saga. You know, since the books came out and, you know, the movies. Now, Now, Twilight is not my cup of tea. Multiple reasons. First off, I don't consider those things vampires. Vampires don't sparkle. I'm sorry. But if you're watching this and you like Twilight, I bear no malice against anyone who likes Twilight. Let's get that out of the way. I'm just saying, to me, those aren't vampires. Or werewolves, and whatever else is in those books. I really did read the first book, and it was okay. I will say that. But it wasn't my cup of tea. But I will say this, I did read the first book. It wasn't alright. I actually did try to read through the second book, but I couldn't do it. So, yeah. Sorry for any... I'm not trying to bash Twilight, but... You know, it really has changed up, you know, the vampires for, you know, not for the best. The best way I could describe in recent years, the two best, you know, things in media that represent vampires are actually two comic books. They're actually two comic books that, you know, represent vampires at their best. And I'm talking about one of them right here in the picture, 30 Days of Night. 30 Days of Night, excellent vampire book series, and Scott Snyder's American Vampire books from Vertigo. Now, the thing is that why I like American Vampire and 30 Days of Night is because it shows vampires as, like, at their best. You know, what I mean is that, you know, vampires at their, you know, when they're just represented as not like, teen idols. They're more like, I would consider, they're more like how they're supposed to be, monsters. You know, these guys don't want to kiss you, they want to rip your throat out and drink your blood. And then we have, like, that's the representation of the 30 Days of Night vampires. They're, you know, they don't love humans, they only view humans as, like, food. And then we have the American Vampire, the ones from American Vampires. Those are, like, recently in the World War II story arc that's going on right now, those vampires are, you know, are Nazi monsters. You know, they're monsters of the Nazi regime. Basically, what's so cool about them is that once you get bitten by one of those vampires, you turn into, like, this snarling hell beast. And then we have, like, vampires like Skinner Sweet and you know, Pearl Jones. Those vampires in there, they're awesome. The other realms of media, actually, the one that vampires dominate the most is not movies, it's actually anime. Vampires dominate anime. And recently, I saw the teasers for the Blade anime, and those look pretty good. People are saying, oh, it's too much like the movies. It actually, to me, it looks like they're trying to take pages out of the Marvel Knights Blade stories. That actually works. You know, the Marvel Knights Blade actually works for anime. But I can't help but feel that that's the same animation from Blood Plus. That looks a lot like the anime art style of Blood Plus. Not saying that's bad, I'm just saying that that's a nice little tidbit of having another vampire animation do the animation of another vampire anime. And Blade works as an anime. Blade, probably out of a majority of vampire anime, Marvel animes, I mean, Blade probably works the most. Right next to, you know, Iron Man, and sadly Wolverine's, I don't know what to think of Wolverine, but X-Men and Iron Man, Blade, that's all good. But, anyway, I'm getting off track. Now, vampires, I've kind of, like, gotten burnt out on vampires, especially when Marvel, I think they did this a year back. They did this a year back called The Death of Dracula, and it was an X-Men story called Curse of the Mutants. In that story, the X-Men were fighting vampires, and even at that point, you know, everyone was just shelling out Marvel was just shelling out vampire stuff to the point where it's like, okay, you're just trying to cash into Twilight. You can't beat around the bush. That's exactly what Marvel was doing. They were trying to cash in on Twilight, but say, ooh, vampires can be badass too. No, you did it. You overdid it. You see, with me, vampires have to have like either one of two things. Either you can go down the route that the 30 Days of Night vampires go down, like they're just animals, and have that like that sadistic sense to them, or you can make them kind of like Dracula. The Dracula vampires, where they're traditional ones, and they're like sex symbols, but they still have that animalistic intent on humans. And yes, I do enjoy old Dracula, vampires that look human, but they can be animals in a heartbeat. Vampires like Dracula. I haven't seen a Dracula movie that I haven't liked. Even the campy ones from the Hammer movies were pretty good. I mean, yeah, you could argue that a lot of them were pure crap, but I think that was the point. They were supposed to be like just shit. I love Christopher Lee as Dracula is pure win, but no one will ever take Bela Lugosi as no one will ever take that throne of Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula. So yeah, now the media has kind of portrayed, especially in a lot of vampire animes like Vampire Knight, which was okay at first. I've tried getting into it, but it was like, not my thing. Vampire Knight was another, good example of vampires in anime. Hellsing remains my favorite all-time vampire anime. Let's be honest, Alucard's a badass. You can't really beat around the bush on that. You can't really deny that, that Alucard, and that actually shows vampires also as, also aristocratic and, very animalistic at the same time, like I was saying. And it has a really good, I always love, I'm a fan of stories that, have old secret tales of World War II, because there's probably a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know about World War II that the Nazis probably made into super weapons. They probably did a lot of weird shit to make a superior race, and I always like stories that delve into that, like a super trooper or a race of vampires or a race of werewolves, something along those lines. I'm not. I always thought that was kind of cool when you have to have a secret tale from World War II. Like this, it was never put on record. Or now I'm just ranting. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was ranting. My bad. But yeah, in the recent months, people really need to get back into that that thrill of vampires. Again, rather than I love vampires. They're so sweet and innocent. Did you not watch 30 Days of Night? The 30 Days of Night movie, or movies I should say, there was a direct-to-DVD sequel. That was actually really good. The direct-to-DVD sequel, that was a adaptation of the second graphic novel that Steve Niles wrote, which was a sequel to the movie as well. So the two movies are based off the first two volumes of 30 Days of Night. Just a little trivia right there. And those were pretty good. Those, for die-hard vampire fans like me, true vampire fans, again, not trying to tear down any Twilight fans. Again, if you're a Twilight fan, okay with me. I just don't like it. 30 Days of Night is the 30 Days of Night movies are considered the anti-Twilight. People will look at them, if people are good true vampire fans, they will look at 30 Days of Night and they'll look at Twilight and go, 30 Days of Night, please. That's kind of the sad truth but yeah, the thing with a lot of these, especially with a lot of these in media with vampires, is that that you have to obey. There are a lot of rules to vampires. I've learned that whenever a vampire shows up, there's a lot of rules you have to cover with vampires. You always have to obey you always have to obey the sunlight rule, the weakness against holy objects rule. You gotta obey you basically have to obey a lot of the rules. And sometimes sometimes it kind of bothers me when people break vampire rules, because that feels like you're breaking the tradition of, classic vampire lore that was set up, long before movies came out. I mean, vampires have been part of, world history. I mean, vampires and this goes for zombies and werewolves too, but the lore with vampires is probably the most oldest, I would say. It's also vampires in one way or another. There are vampire lore or legends all throughout the world. I'm not saying they're true. It's just that there are different variations of vampires, and they all have their own little mystic lore. And I feel like if you break that lore or break some of the rules to a vampire myth, you're kind of dissing the whole history in general. That's how I feel. You gotta. It's kind of like in tradition, like. A lot of tradition, like a lot of traditions, but it's kind of weird too because with werewolves they kind of changed up the rules, but it's just media rules. Because a fun fact, werewolves for werewolf mythology, silver bullets and full moon stuff, that's all media, and I feel like if you break that rule in a movie rule for werewolves, you're not really breaking history lore because there's no records in vampire and werewolf mythology that it says that, so. That's kind of like a pass. But with vampires, that's like set up rules back when, back all the way to like the Dark Ages. So I feel like again, once again, I feel like I'm repeating myself here, which I probably am. I apologize. But like I said, if you break if you break the rules of vampire rules that are set up for movies or books or comic books or all the other stuff, I feel like you're kind of breaking the tradition there. So that's basically what I'm trying to get across here. These guys really need some help. I'd like to see more traditional vampires in other books. I mean, not books, I mean movies, and the priest vampires were, okay, I give it a pass because, yeah, that movie sucked, but the priest vampires were it was a totally different alternate dimension, so alternate dimension vampires, that's a pass. But for the most part, I feel like these guys really need to get their fangs back. They really need to, vampires really need to get their fangs back into media and show the general public that vampires aren't like teen idols. They're monsters. Monsters that will tear out your throat in a heartbeat. So I think the media in general needs to get back to that. Now, vampire anime and comic books, they got that down. But for the most part, vampires in anime and comic books, they got that down. They basically show, for the most part, a lot of these anime show vampires as bloodthirsty monsters. Those are vampires that you would see. Like I said for comic books, 30 Days of Night and American Vampire. That's where you can find a traditional vampire lore. The other ones are, another one that's kind of lacking is cartoons, but cartoons make fun. I feel like we really need a good animated vampire series for cartoons because it feels like whenever a vampire shows up in a cartoon, it's always goofy and hokey. It's never threatening. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing one cartoon that had a vampire in it that was actually kind of scary, but I can't remember the name of it. Sorry. But movies need the most help. I'm going to say that right now. Vampires in movies need the most help. So that's basically what I'm trying to get across. But yeah, I think I pretty much said my piece on all of it. And, what do you... hope you guys have enjoyed my 3-part analysis on the 3 big monsters in the media. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. And how do you guys feel about, vampires in general, how they're portrayed in media? And do you like where it's going, or do you want to see, back to basics? You guys let me know.